Okay, so we are doing, this is the 4th video that I'm making for the Wednesday, April 15th reading. This is Act 1, Scene 2. This is a shorter scene, so I'm hoping that I can make this one in under 10 minutes, all in this one scene, cover it in under 10 minutes here. All right, so Act 1, Scene 2. We cut to House Capulet. If you remember, the prince walked off the stage after he broke up the fight. He walked off with the Capulets to talk to them. And so now we have and he's talking to Count Paris. Count Paris is a noble person who is above Lord Capulet's station. He's closer to the prince in his aristocracy and his nobility. He's more important. And they are talking about Lord Capulet's daughter, Juliet. Count Paris is interested in marrying her. He wants to marry Juliet. He is asking Lord Capulet, can I marry your daughter? He's never met her officially. He thinks she's pretty, and so that's who he's decided he wants to marry. And this is the conversation that they're having. Lord Capulet is flattered at this. He likes the idea of it, but he thinks she's still maybe a little too young. He's like, she is, and I'm on page 1 of the Act 1, Scene 2 pages on the website. Capulet says, I can only repeat what I've said before. My daughter is still very young. She's not even 14 years old. She's 13. Let's wait 2 more summers before we start thinking she's ready to get married. So he's like, yeah, I like you. I love the idea of you being my son-in-law, but maybe let's give it a year or 2. Paris, Count Paris, we cut it down, just call him Paris. And it is a man. So just remember that, because it can be tricky. I know Paris we think of as probably more of a girl name, but either way. So Capulet then goes on to say, you don't want to marry girls too soon, because too soon married are soon marred. He said, and too soon marred are those so early made. And a lot of times, like in the old 60s Zeffirelli film, like they'll cut to him looking at his wife like he thinks, you know, that if you marry too soon, too young, that then you get sick of him too soon, like he's sick of his wife. So it's kind of a little bit of a comedic deal there. But there isn't any stage directions for the actual play to do that. That's just that's a liberty that directors take when they make films. But then Capulet goes on to say, tonight I'm having a dinner. I'm inviting a bunch of people. Why don't you come and look at all the beautiful ladies that are there? Maybe you'll see one that you like better than Juliet. And if that's the case, then absolutely, you should shop around before you decide on somebody that you want to marry. So while they're talking, he's writing up his guest list, and he then turns and gives it to Peter, his servant. And he tells Peter, and I'm on page 2 of the pages, the internet pages here. Go, little fellow, walk all around Verona, find the people on this list, and tell them they're welcome at my house tonight. So essentially, instead of individual invitations being sent out, he's sending Peter around with a list of the invitees, and Peter is just supposed to go tell them, you are invited, you're invited, you're invited, all right? Then Count Paris and Lord Capulet exit the stage, and Peter's there by himself on stage looking at this list. So it becomes clear he's troubled, he has a dilemma. I'll read you the text here, and I'm going to read you the old Shakespeare version of his text on page 2. Find them out whose names are written here? It is written that the shoemaker should meddle with his yard, and the tailor with his last, the fisher with his pencil, and the painter with his nets. But I am sent to find those persons whose names are here writ, and can never find what names the writing person hath here writ. I must to the learned in good time. So essentially what he's saying here is, and I'm going to cut over to the modernized translation, I can't read. So he's illiterate. He can't read. So he has a problem. I can't read the names on this list. I don't know what I'm going to do here. So he starts looking around on the street. Maybe I can find somebody to read this list for me. This is fate intervening, because at that moment, who comes onto the screen or onto the stage but Benvolio and Romeo, and they're still having the same conversation they were having when they left scene 1. And in fact, you jump right into Benvolio being like, come on, man, you can put one fire out by starting another, telling him, we got to get you another girl to get hooked on. Here comes Peter with this list, and Peter stops them. Peter doesn't know who they are, and that's important, because if he knew that they were of the House Montague, his master's enemy, he wouldn't have asked them for help. He wouldn't have shown them this list, but he doesn't know that. And so he asks them, he stops them. He's like, excuse me, sirs, could you please read the people's names on this list to me? I mean, can you read? That's what he starts out with. He says, excuse me, sir, do you know how to read? Romeo, and I'm on page 3 here. Romeo says, I can read my own fortune and my misery. There's Romeo, roundabout answers. His everything is just a me, I'm so sad. Peter then says, but perhaps you've learned from life and not from books, but please tell me, can you read anything you see? Romeo says, well, I mean, if I know the language and the letters. He's kind of teasing him. Peter, who's very simple, not that bright, he says, oh, okay, you can't read either. So cool. All right, I'll go find somebody else. And then Romeo's like, no, man, I can read. Come back. So he gives him the letter. He gives him the list. These are all a bunch of super Italian names here. Stayfellow, I can read. Signor Martino, his wife and daughters. Count Anselm, a lot of kind of unimportant people that do not ever appear in the play. Mercutio, though, is important. Mercutio is Romeo's best friend. Mercutio is neutral with respect to the feud, okay, because he's not a member of either of the families. He would lean more to the Romeo side because Romeo is his best friend, but officially he doesn't really have a position for the feud. But he's on this invitation list. He's also, Mercutio is related to the prince. Then you've got Uncle Capulet, wife and daughters, fair niece Rosaline. Rosaline's the one. Rosaline is the one that Romeo has a crush on, that he is pining over right now. Tybalt is invited, so that's important as well, that Tybalt will be there. So then Romeo looks at the list. He's like, that's a nice group of people. Where are they supposed to come? Peter says, well, to my master's house. He's having a masquerade and dinner. And as long as you're not from the house of Montague, and he says that like the odds would be that they're not, but they happen to be. As long as you're not from the house of Montague, you should come and have a cup of wine with us. And so at that point, he leaves. He takes his list and goes, and it's just Benvolio and Romeo, and they have that kind of moment where they're looking at each other like, yeah, we got to go to this party. So Benvolio has one goal with respect to this party. Romeo has another. Benvolio says, the beautiful Rosaline, and I'm on page 4, sorry. The beautiful Rosaline, whom you love so much, will be at the Capulets' traditional feast, along with every beautiful woman in Verona. Go there and compare her objectively to some other girls I'll show you. The woman who you think is as beautiful as a swan is going to look as ugly as a crow to you. These are some cool rhyming lines in the old Shakespeare, and I'll read them now. Sups the fair Rosaline, whom thou so loves, with all the admired beauties of Verona. Go thither, and with unattainted eye compare her face with some that I shall show, and I will make thee think thy swan a crow. And then Romeo's like, well, I will definitely go along with this, but not because I think I'm going to find somebody else. I'm just going to go so I can see Rosaline. So he says, I'll go along, no such sight to be shown, but to rejoice in splendor of mine own. So that is the end of Act 1, Scene 2. So they have a plan. They're going to crash this party. And that is the end of our videos, kind of my explanations, the things that I would go through for the reading if we were covering this traditionally in the classroom. If you have any questions, let me know. I will try to make these for the other scenes that we cover, but I'm learning, so you guys bear with me on these. Thanks.